Why do some kids seem to act out more than others, even in the same family? If you have ever wondered why one child acts out while another seems calm, let me break that down for you. The big thing to remember here is that every child is an individual. So just because they come from the same family, or maybe they've experienced the same background, or they've got the same genes, or whatever it might be, this child is an individual. Even identical twins are individuals in and of themselves. And every child has a unique temperament that influences, that's a good word, that influences their behavior. That means that every child has an individual level of the things that they can and are willing to tolerate, and the skill sets that they have to regulate themselves in different situations. Every child is different. So if you're seeing one child who is acting out more in one situation, or one child who's acting out in another situation, or maybe you've got one child who does tend to act out more than the others, it may be good just to remind yourself that this child is an individual. Just because they're a part of your family and just because they were raised by you does not mean that they're going to respond in exactly the same ways as their siblings might. And if you'll keep in mind that they're trying to communicate something through their behavior, then that can help you respond with empathy. So that's the first part, is really remember that every child is an individual. Another thing to really take into consideration is developmental differences. That could mean that one child is older or younger than the others. So, for instance, there are children who are younger and they throw more tantrums when they don't get the things that they want. And then you'll see that middle school students may throw more tantrums just when you are trying to tell them what to do. Both of those are actually developmentally appropriate responses. That does not mean that those are acceptable responses, but it does mean that at their level of development, that's an appropriate way, that's a typical way for them to respond. So those differences in their development, whether they be younger or older, or you may have a child who is older but younger developmentally. It could be due to autism spectrum disorder, or it could be due to some developmental delay or developmental difficulty that they are slightly younger than just their age may be. When you take all of that into consideration, then you can see that disruptive behaviors at different times, while not behaviors that we should just accept and say, well, that's just the way it is, they are developmentally appropriate or developmentally typical, may be the better phrasing. That teenagers want to spend less time with their adult caregivers, that teenagers will do more thrill seeking, and that they can be sometimes more impulsive makes sense. That younger children throw more tantrums when they don't immediately get what they want. That children in those middle ages of middle school, that they may show more disruptive behaviors when they're feeling a lack of self-esteem. All of those things, it's not to say that these are bad kids doing bad things just because they like doing bad things. At their developmental level, those are the things that their brain is more wired to respond to. So when you take into account that every child is an individual, and you take into account that every child is at a different developmental level, then that can help explain some of this difference in disruptive behaviors. There's one final piece, and that is birth order. Now, the science behind birth order is nuanced, and we can call it maybe an art rather than a science. But there is some research that does show that, for instance, children who are born first and they're the oldest child, they exhibit certain traits and certain behaviors. And that middle children, like me, the best part of the Oreo is the middle. The best child in the sequence is the middle child. So middle children exhibit certain traits and certain qualities a lot of the time. That youngest children exhibit certain traits and certain qualities a lot of the time. That children in blended families exhibit certain traits and certain difficulties or disruptive behaviors at certain times. There's all sorts of nuance that where a child is in the family order also influences their temperament, and it influences some of the disruptive behaviors that they may show. For instance, a younger child or a youngest child many times will show disruptive behaviors if they don't get what they want. An oldest child will show disruptive behaviors if another sibling is getting more attention. That can happen with youngest children too. Middle children never show any disruptive behaviors at all because we are magnificent. No, middle children are typically the attention seekers, and so there can be disruptive behaviors related around attention seeking. When you take that into account, then you can understand why one child may be behaving differently than another child. If you are seeing differences in your own kids' behavior and this was helpful, make sure that you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe so that you don't miss out on the fun tips and tricks here, as well as it does help other people find this content. So please like and subscribe. Thank you so much.